Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And I have to admit, I'm still a little bit hoarse.
Yeah, I was just noticing that too.
Still a little bit hoarse
Came in
from
like
this
a bass
past.
today.
Still a little bit hoarse, yeah, from the past weekend, but it was a great weekend. And we got to see a lot of you guys. At, I guess I should say, Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. So in the past few weeks, we have been bringing you 2 shows a week, and we were highlighting so many of the different people that we were going to see at the expo. And it was nice, actually, that we got to talk to some of those people because we were able to have those in-depth conversations, look a little bit deeper. The show is great, but you only get kind of surface level of some of these products because sometimes you're moving through fast and you're excited and you want to see it all. So it was nice to be able to have that time and take those deep dives beforehand, and then even go and see all of those different products in person and the people.
Yeah, it was awesome. We had a lot of people stop and chat with us, which we always encourage. It's super cool, and it like she said, it's easy. It's a lot more fun when you get to sit down and deep dive into some of this stuff. And who doesn't like giving out free stuff? There was lots of our vendors were very generous this year. They provided us a lot of product. HT in particular made a lot of kids happy with a lot of times their first fishing pole. We saw a lot of first time kids and families out this past weekend, so that was really fun.
And gosh, I want to say that we did get to see so many people because the other thing that we were hearing is, I don't know if official attendance counts have come out yet, right? I think they posted on their Facebook page when that comes out, but we did hear that at least Saturday was kind of record setting for attendance. So we always talk about being excited for the expo and seeing people, but it's always nice to know that you guys are excited as well. So thank you so much to everybody who joined us, took time out of their busy holiday season and their busy ice fishing season. And it was great. And we're looking forward to next year.
Yeah, we are. And we are also looking forward to getting on the ice eventually here. So
well, and I guess with that, I guess I can't say that we have an up-to-date ice fishing report because we had not been on the ice. But one thing that I will say is we had kind of a cold spell that really, honestly, even under the snow, was building ice. Like what I was seeing online, people were reporting more ice than what I thought that there would be. But remember, this is especially because a lot of Wisconsin is getting rain tonight. So I don't know if you're in Wisconsin or where you're at, but with these big temperature swings, just that ice, if it was inconsistent to begin with, this is going to encourage that inconsistency, and so it's easy to be thinking, ice fishing, end of December, getting close to January, here we go. But as always, safety first.
James, you're more than welcome for all the camera stuff. We really enjoy doing that. And if you guys ever need us to hit something more, if you want us just to walk around the expo, just let us know while we're doing the expos and the camera stuff, and we'll make that happen. But like to your point, yeah, it can drive inconsistencies. Just remember, like, this is kind of like a Zamboni going over the ice as well. So make sure you have your creepers on, make sure you have that spud bar, make sure you have the throw bag, all of that good stuff going out this weekend, because we're gonna have all that stuff going out this weekend too. So
but, I think especially with the holiday season, there's some people that are going to be home. And although many people are spending time with family in the holidays, there are some people that, they are working on their fishing gear. And so if that's ice fishing, maybe, but some people are even, I think, working on their boat. It is the
or fishing still.
Well, that I guess could be here in the ice belt. I don't know if people are really getting to that. I think even the rivers are.
Steve Schaefer's always never puts his boat away.
Well, but that's, I guess, where we're going with this is if you are working on your boat, if it's your off season or not, that doesn't matter because we have a really awesome product here for you guys. I think we were going to talk to them in October, but the way our schedule worked out, we are here. And so you never know, this might make a perfect Christmas gift for somebody.
Yeah.
So let's bring in our guest, Brad. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Oh, you're very welcome. Glad to be here.
And so, we're lucky to be meeting you here for the first time. And I think some of these viewers at home will be too. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Brad Stahl, and I founded Piranha Propellers back in 1989. My background was in aeronautical engineering, and I was doing a lot of aircraft propeller design work and early drones. And conversation with my brother over Christmas, and he was up in the Willamette River area in Oregon, boating a lot, breaking lots of propellers, and he's talking to me going, is there something we could do with the aviation stuff you're working on that would save me some money? I'm tired of spending so much money. I'm damaging props all the time. That's what led to Piranha Propellers. I took the same high strength materials that we were designing for drone props, which is a injection molded high strength nylon fiberglass composite, and I applied it to the marine propellers. I also applied kind of another technology, kind of like they use in turbines, which have replaceable, or not really necessarily replaceable, but they have individual blades that make up the low speed compressors on the turbine engines. So I went ahead and came up with a propeller system that allowed you to replace the blades, and that saves a lot of money. You can just replace, if you damage a blade, you can replace one, put it back on. You can do it yourself. You don't have to take it to a repair shop, wait, a few weeks to get it done. It's less expensive than having your prop repaired. And that was 30 years ago when I started it. It's even become more applicable now, where the replacement blades are even more economical than having your aluminum fixed, because things don't tend to get fixed as much anymore like they used to. So that's what led to the Piranha Propellers. We did all of our first design testing back in the end of 1989. I went to the San Francisco Marine and Boat Show in December of 89, and we brought to market the first three-bladed propeller, which was 150 to 300 horsepower, designed for Mercury's and OMC outboards and inboard outboards. At that time, 30 years ago, Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda really did not have much of a presence in the marine industry. It was Mercury and OMC. Of course, that was Evinrude Johnson, as offshoots from OMC. And then I think it probably took me 3 more years before I had a complete line of 5 different hub styles that dropped us to 9.9, all the way up to 300 horsepower. And it's all used the same concept. They're just larger diameter, larger hubs, smaller hubs, whatever it takes. And when I started, I had my original molds made for me by a company in Boulder, Colorado. And my material was all coming from Exton, Pennsylvania. There again, 30 years ago, this was revolutionary material. It was very high strength nylon composite, like I mentioned. And then over the years, I've changed companies on the material. I now buy it from a company in Winona, Minnesota, which was an offshoot from LMP, the original company, because I wanted to kind of stay local, or not local, but I wanted to stay with a U.S. manufacturer, and that allowed me to do that. And then, of course, very early on, I realized it was way too expensive to have outside agencies build my tooling. So bought some early CNC milling machines and started making my own tooling. Then it was like, man, it sure would be nice to be able to injection mold the product myself, so I don't have to subcontract that out. So I bought my first injection molding machines. And then you're like, well, I've gotten kind of used to being able to make product on demand. So then I had to buy some more injection molding machines. So I ended up with, 3 injection molding machines and 3 or 4 CNC mills and lathes so that we could do all the work. And been doing that ever since 1990, and we sell the product all over the world. When I first started, there was a lot of hesitation about a plastic propeller. That's all gone away. People recognize now that composites are very strong, they're durable. One of the aspects of our propellers is not only the replaceability, but it's also the ability for it to absorb energy. If you hit something solid with a stainless prop or an aluminum prop, it can do a lot of damage, not only to the propeller, but to the lower unit as well. You can break gears, bend shafts, things like that. Our product, because of the nature of the composite, absorbs the energy better and dissipates it. It still breaks, it still fails, chips, dings, or whatever. But in the process of doing that, it absorbs the energy much better than even the rubber bushed hubs used to do and things like that. And to this day, our biggest customers are the rental organizations.
Oh.
I mean, we get and see pictures of props. It looks like they've been running them in the parking lot. Things are just destroyed. So,
I should laugh. It's not even funny. That's terrible.
so yeah, they really appreciate it. That not only are they able to not have the damage to the lower units, which keeps the boats running and rentable, when a customer does damage it, it's not an expensive repair. If they've hit, you've got a 90 horsepower outboard on a pontoon boat that's being rented, and they hit a rock and damage a blade, it's $20 to get a new blade put back on there. You haven't done any damage to the lower unit. The customer's unhappy because there's an additional $20 to their rental fee, but it wasn't $120 or $150 or a broken engine, which even makes it more expensive and kind of turns you off or puts you off for the rental operation. So it kind of works out good for the consumer and the rental operation as well. So that's where a good portion, I would have to say 50% of our propeller blades go to rental operations for that reason. Of course, the general boater sees it, but they're not breaking a prop every weekend like a rental operation. But maybe once a season they might damage a prop, and it's a lot nicer. Like I said, the blades are replaceable and individual. And if you buy one of our prop kits, it comes with a complete propeller. Say it's a 3-blade Mercury 200 horse outboard. That would come with the hub, 3 blades, and the prop kit would give you another 3 blades. And then we also manufacture a floating prop wrench. So you'd have in the bag, you would have the prop wrench, the blades, and it's all broken down, so it doesn't take up any space on your boat. If it does happen to fall on your foot, it's not like a stainless prop hitting your foot and cutting your toe off. It's it's much lighter, and it's just not going to do the damage banging around in your boat. So it's really convenient. And like I said, hopefully you don't damage anything else. You're just replacing the blades. So that's I don't know, that would be a general description. Of course,
Yeah.
going a little off topic, because I had the milling machines, the injection molding machines, and a background in aeronautical engineering, I've done, and it probably comprises 50% of our actual work here. We make mostly high-end military drone propellers for NASA, wind tunnel testing, the R&D products, because we're really good at making tooling. We do it all in-house, so we're really efficient. We can do tooling that's very inexpensive to do very short production runs. And in the drone industry, you're not making, Apple would never come to me to make parts for their iPhone and make millions of parts or hundreds of millions of parts a year. That's not what we do. But if NASA comes to me and says, we need 80 propellers for a special project in testing, we can do a project like that. And it's much less expensive than machining the parts out of billet aluminum. They also don't get the weight savings or anything else. So we can take all the technology we used in the marine propellers and apply it to those other technologies, which really reduces the cost. We can do very short run production. So we do a lot of that type of work as well. And then I also feel like I kind of reached the pinnacle of, I don't know, manufacturing. All of our waste material, we grind up and we use in our hydrofoil stabilizer. So I'm able to make a product that doesn't cost me anything, from a material standpoint, and it's just the labor to mold it. So, if you can get the material for free, it's a pretty good way to make a product. And we try to use up all of our regrind material in that particular product line. So
I'm going to jump in here real quick.
Yeah.
And I think Josh can maybe take a minute and we'll pull up the website in a minute. But the other thing I have to say is I'm listening to so much of what you're talking about. And I swear I'm not going to talk ice fishing all night. But I do have to make a connection here because, you were talking about the industry and being so nervous at first about, parts being made out of plastic. And so I think so much of ice augers, we're just going through that transition. People are always on that lookout for more portable gear. Dragging things through the ice is hard.
Right.
And so to make our gear lighter, one of the things that companies have done is taken all the flighting of that ice auger and made it, plastic. And when you
Mhm.
say plastic, it's not necessarily like the brittle, what you think will break, it's about these new materials that you're talking about. So I think it's really cool that the ice fishing industry is just kind of crossing this bridge, but in a way you paved this path long ago. And this is the other thing that we love talking to people about is, you used your expertise from, not even fishing, from aeronautics, from other things to create this awesome product. And that is so cool when people can really use their strengths and turn it into something so like fun and useful. And so you're talking about, I guess, a stabilizer, the hydrofoil, and also, I guess, the propeller. Can you pull this up here? I thought you were going to have it ready.
Well, if I do it, then it just changes the screen.
I mean, I've got one of the, go ahead. Yeah, that's it. That's a hydrofoil stabilizer.
Awesome. And so that's really cool that you're even able to reuse all of those little bits that you're talking about and make a whole new product. That's a really great way to go as a company.
Yep. And then
Yeah.
if you scroll down just a little bit, because that's a good shot of it right there. Go up to the propeller, go up. There you go, the 4-blade prop. The other thing that we incorporated probably about 10 years ago, we call them hydrobites, but there again, it's an aerodynamic device. It's a flow fence, and you can see them on the back side of the blade. That helps improve the whole shot of the blade. It keeps the flow going the right direction on the blade. And it was something that we found worked. It really helped on the acceleration of the blade. It also helps a little bit with respect to, like, I guess the term would be blowout. When you go into a tight turn with a outboard motor or stern drive, it tends to suck air, either exhaust air, surface air, into the propeller. And that seemed to help control, I don't know, or keep the flow attached better to the blade. So you could do tighter turns and things like that. But that was something we came out with about 10 years ago, and then we incorporated it into the whole product line.
Wow. And I think, Josh, if you scroll even more, because where we kind of all started is with that propeller. Keep going up. There you go. So
Yeah.
this is a really great, do you call this like the exploded version? So
Yeah,
you can see when
exploded view, sure.
together.
Yeah.
So I know you kind of touched on this before, but can you explain, like, what are we looking at and how are the blades replaceable?
Yeah, if you look at that picture, you can see on the far right, there's a hub. And in this case, that would be one of our 4-bladed hubs. And we have 3 and 4-bladed propellers. So this is a 4. And so that hub, the pocket that is in the hub is tapered. And when you slide the blade in, it can only go one way because I'll call it the front of the blade where that first arrow was at. That is smaller than the back of the blade where the second arrow is at. So you can only put it in one way. But once it goes in, it slides very easily into that tapered pocket, which is about it's about a 1-degree taper. And it slides in, and it'll slide into where you can push it down with your thumb, but you're still going to have like about a 1/4 of an inch still sticking out. So you just take a mallet, you gently tap on it, that pushes it in another 1/4 of an inch, and that seats the propeller blade in the hub. Of course, if you do that 4 times, you now have 4 blades that are now all seated into the propeller hub, and that constitutes a complete propeller for you. If you damage a blade, you can take a mallet and smack what's left of the blade back out of the hub, and once it moves about a 1/4 of an inch, it'll just come out easily. It just comes out. It literally falls out. So anyway, back up to all 4 blades are in the hub. The last thing in the picture on the far left is a rear cap. That rear cap aligns with 4 male bosses on it into 4 holes on the hub, and that makes a complete propeller assembly. The whole assembly then slides onto the prop shaft. And the first thing that goes on the prop shaft would be your thrust washer. The propeller goes on. Then you put on the nut, and when you turn the nut down tight on the prop shaft, that sandwiches the whole assembly together so it can't fall apart. Or the cap can't come out, the blades can't come out, nothing can come out because that nut is holding and sandwiching everything between the very first thing, the thrust washer, and the nut on the other side, holds the whole assembly together. So there's no extra parts or pieces that are required to hold this together. It's all done just naturally with the parts that are on the propeller shaft. And this concept, this would be a 260 horsepower Mercury stern drive 4-blade propeller, but the exact same concept holds true for a 9-inch diameter 3-bladed 9.9 horsepower outboard. It all goes together the same way. One thing I didn't mention that I learned very on in my testing, yes, this material is very strong. It's on par with your die-cast aluminum. However, it really wasn't strong enough in the spline area inside the hub. And my original parts that I made the splines were injection molded. And what I learned was after about, well, I could even back up. We didn't discuss that at all. When I first got the product done, I also purchased an old Ranger 260 horsepower stern drive Mercury boat. First thing I did was cut the skag off of it, so there was no skag on the bottom of the drive. And then I would go out to a local lake and I would submerge like a 6x6 with weights at just the right amount, just the right height under the water. And then I would intentionally drive over it. And I blew up, I don't know how hundreds and hundreds of tests were done figuring out what the failure point was going to be. And it became very apparent with the first prototype that 1 or 2 really good hits where you would say destroy 2 blades completely, I could start stripping out the splines on the inside of the hub. So I had to do something to increase the shear strength of the spline area of the hub. So what I ended up doing was making dies and using aluminum 6061 T6 alloy aluminum, and we over molded that extrusion with the exterior shape that you see there in the picture. And then that allowed me to broach the spline pattern into the aluminum. The aluminum had aluminum wasn't significantly stronger, but it had better shear characteristics in the spline area than the composite had. In doing that, we eventually decided that I would guarantee the hub for life. If you damage a hub, it gets replaced on us, because we may get back, I don't know, a dozen hubs a year, maybe. And of those dozen hubs, 10 of them came from the rental operation that are running them in the parking lot. So it made it very durable. So that means that allowed me to essentially make it so the hub was guaranteed for life. And once you bought the Piranha system, you'd only have to replace the blades. So, and like I said, we don't get very many hubs back. I would say the most common problem we have ultimately with props that have been out there 10, 20, 25 years is corrosion gets at it. And corrosion will eventually eat away at the splines. And then all of a sudden, due to corrosion, they'll fail. That probably represents 30% of what we see on hub failures. And then the other 70% would be just really good hits of objects underwater, where it's usually not the aluminum that fails, but you might crack or dislodge part of the outer composite covering, which kind of renders the pocket useless because it doesn't grab the blade properly. So they usually come back to that. And then we'll get a handful of hubs that come back because they've decided to grab a ski rope and wrap it around it. Oh. And the ski rope ends up melting, cutting, becoming part of the hub, and it doesn't work anymore. And so like I said, we get a few of those every year, but like I said, it's usually not more than maybe 10 or so hubs that'll come back, mostly from the rental operations. So it turned out to be a very robust system, but that was a correction that I had to make early on during my testing. And another testament that came out during the testing was like I said, I had purchased a Ranger with a 260 stern drive. I figured at some point I'd probably, before I kind of gave the boat to an employee, I probably did around 2,000 full power hits, either against the 6x6s, a 6x6 with a steel plate bolted on top, or just said, the heck with it. I'm going to run the prop through the rocks right next to the shore and see what happens. And on the early Mercury Generation 1 stern drives, the weak link in the system is a vertical shaft that goes not in the lower unit, but it goes up vertically. There's a small spline shaft that interconnects kind of midway up on the gear setup on the Mercury drive. That was typically the failure point. Those would usually twist off. And so after all those hits, before I got rid of the boat, I pulled that apart and looked at it. And I had about a 10-degree twist in that spline pattern. It hadn't failed yet, but there was about a 10-degree twist in it. Now, it could have been that way before I even started my testing, or I did it during my testing. But still, like I said, we're talking 2,000 at least full power hits is what I did with that.
Wow.
And that being the weak link, it never failed. So, I mean, we still get maybe a customer every, I don't know, a handful of years that might bend a prop shaft due to a hit because they side load it's not necessarily the blade that's failing, but they side load the hub in such a way that it might bend the shaft. But I don't think we've ever had a gear train failure with our system just because the energy absorption is so much better and it just doesn't fail stuff. So a little more history on it.
Well, and one of the things that I love is, it's easy to think about the people like water skiing or speedboating around, or I don't know, some of these like funny fast boating things in the summer. But, you also have to think of, we're by the Wolf River and the Fox River. I mean, that's the thing about the rivers is every single year. Oh, I said I wasn't going to talk about ice season, but I was going to say, especially after ice season, when all those ice flows push down, tree branches flow down, all kinds of different things push down those river systems. And even if you have them mapped, even if you are the most careful of boater, sometimes you just hit things. Sometimes you bump into things and that just happens. And so it is always terrible when you see somebody experience that, right? Because that their boat is like so disabled for the day then, but when you have a way that you can go and you can replace that, switch that out, that's the kind of thing when we talk about, the best fishing products are the one that keeps you on the water, keeps you fishing, keeps you out there. And this is ultimately one of those products.
Yeah. One thing in your area there, we talked about rental operations. We supply a lot of propellers to the Canadian fish camps, things like that, lower horsepower motors. There again, they like the product because they're usually more remote locations, and they like the ability of having all of these blades stored on site. They can keep the boats rented. They don't do damage. So we do sell a lot to our Canadian distributors to the fish camps, and then probably even into the northern United States where you have the same thing, where you're like you say, you're boating in areas with lots of things trying to wreck your day on the water.
Well, and I've in my mind, this is an inexpensive insurance policy for something that's honestly quite vital to having any kind of seagoing vessel, right? You need to have some form of propulsion, and if you don't have that propulsion, then you're just sitting in a bathtub.
You're done. Yeah.
So I mean, things aren't getting less expensive, right? And that goes for outboards and inboards. And so, having something that will protect that, goes a long way in my mind. And the great thing about this for me personally is that the stages in which you've kind of given us your history, and that it's been. You brought your first one to market in '89, and it's been so long since then. For one, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I haven't heard of you until this year, and so I don't know why us in the Midwest haven't adopted these, because like she said, like people are just blowing up props all the time on rivers and rocks and stuff.
We saw it happen last year.
Yeah, we hit rocks last year.
Well,
we didn't break our propeller, but like we saw it. But but the whole design element and just taking the care into like your tapered fit for the fins. And I was I was going to bring up the aluminum splines because I to give you full disclosure, I watched the product video on your website, and so I thought that was really cool. My Emily and I, we have right behind us here, we have a lure shop, and so a lot of your injection molding and your tooling is very reminiscent of making baits. You know, like putting in the structure for baits, molding around it, so it's an integral part of that unit. You know, this is all super fascinating, and it's really cool that it's been around for so long, and that like you've done thousands of tests with it, and it's just continuing to save people money.
Yeah, well, I'm sure our sales in your area will take off now that I've done the show with you.
I hope so. I can only hope.
Not until May.
I don't know. April.
Yeah, I guess walleye season. Oh man.
Well, but I did throw that little bit in here at the beginning of the show, though. Is that there are people that fish in the Midwest. They fish in their boat all season long. You know, you have the Mississippi River. You mentioned the Fox. You know, that stays, a lot of that stays open. There's some places where you can fish in your boat, you know, around the Midwest if you really want to. You know, there's some people that just for some reason don't like ice fishing. I don't know why you wouldn't. You're from California, so you may not understand, but for us, it's one of those things where there's nothing quite like a cold day out in the sunshine that just makes something.
The majority of our year is winter. We have to like
you
it,
have
or
to
you're
like
gonna
it,
be out. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
The majority of our year is summer, so it's I don't know, the ice fishing. I understand it. I know why you guys do it. I just don't know if that's for me.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
So when you are, let's say somebody's watching the podcast either now or later on, and they're thinking, hey, this would be a good gift or something. How, you know, there's so many different sizes and types of motors. How does one pick out the right propeller? And how, you know, because you, like, even for me, it's daunting when you're looking for an aluminum propeller. There's like prop pitch, and there's this and there's that, and it's like it's very daunting to try and figure all of that out when I'm just like, dude, I just want to put a propeller on there so I can like make my boat go forward and I can go fishing.
That is one of the more complicated parts. We've got a pretty good website that if you go to piranha.com, you can go through it and it'll step you through what would be good for your boat. Of course, the easiest way to do it is step one. You got to know what motor you're putting it on, what year of the motor, so that we can get the right hub for your application. Then once you've got the right hub, you got to figure out what the pitch and diameter of the blade is. And our website will help you with that. Of course, the easiest help is when you have your old prop. If you can see what pitch you were running, that really helps because that makes it a really good starting point. Now, of course, you bought the boat used, the motor was on it when you bought it, the prop was put on right before you bought the boat because somebody had one laying in the dirt that they could sell with that. So you don't really know if it was the right one for your boat or not. And unfortunately, the whole key to propping the boat correctly is to know what the RPM the motor's running at. And of course, when you start talking about the smaller motors, you guys don't have tacks on them. So you really don't know what the RPM of the motor is. So it takes an experienced person that can kind of tell by sound or feel what the motor is actually revving to. A lot of people don't have that experience, so it just makes it difficult. But on a motor with a tack, makes it really easy. What's the art? You know, the manufacturer says you're supposed to be turning at 5,500 between, I don't know, 5,000 and 5,500 RPM. Well, you want to be at full throttle turning between 5,000 and 5,500 RPM with the average weight you're going to be putting in the boat or the conditions you normally use the boat for. So if you have RPM, it makes it easy. If you have the pitch that you're currently using and it's in the right RPM range, we know where to start. Pretty much you're going to get the right prop. If you don't have a tack, it's a little more difficult and you're kind of doing things more by feel at that point. You're what do you think the boat is getting to? What do you Do you feel like it's really sluggish and like the motor's bogging down? Well, then you can get them a prop with a lower pitch. Maybe the boat is more happy with that. Just it makes it a little more difficult. But along those lines, you buy a Piranha propeller, and we've made our best guess on your 25 horsepower Johnson. Johnson, that's an old name. Your Tahatsu, 25 horse Tahatsu. We've made our best guess. Well, there's two things, and we've determined it's going to be a 9-inch pitch. But on the outside, it might be an 11-inch pitch. You can buy the prop kit. You can buy it with a 9-inch pitch. You can buy it with an 11-inch pitch. You can go out and try it. As long as you don't hit the bottom or destroy the blades and use them once, and you decide that the 11-inch pitch was perfect, the 9-inch pitch was a little too low in pitch, you can just return the blades to us and we'll swap them out for a set of 11s. So you can experiment a little bit. And you get the 9s and you get the 11s and you try them both and you go, the 9 was too high a pitch, my RPM's too low. Well, then you can send the 9s and the 11s back and we'll get you a set of 7s that might get it work. So it's really easy for us to do that as long as you haven't damaged the blades, because you're keeping you're keeping the hub that's got grease all over it on the spline area that would have to be cleaned. But the blades they slide in and out of the slots. As long as you don't, handle them roughly, drop them in the mud, just use them, try them once. We can swap them out. We do that a lot for people that don't know where they're at with respect to pitch. And that's hard to do, like an aluminum or stainless prop. That's kind of hard to do because typically once you buy it, it's yours. And that's because now the hub has grease all over it or something like that. It's harder for them to exchange the blades or the propellers, whereas it's easy for us to exchange the blades.
And of course, that's super awesome, because not only are you dealing with the grease and stuff, but you can do this right at the boat launch, right? You can dunk your boat in, take it for a loop, come back to the dock and pull it and then just quickly, you probably don't even have to pull it all the way off, because it doesn't seem like it takes that long. You take the nut off, pull the front part off, pop the blades out, replace the blades, and then you're back to going, testing it again. And then you can it doesn't take like a whole weekend, and you're not getting full of grease, right? So that's super cool.
Yeah. So we have not a lot of customers, but we'll have a number of customers every year. They don't know quite where they're going to be at. We try to get the right prop to them. We have really good, excellent customer service. The Tommy and Holly that take care of all the people here, they do a good job trying to figure out what somebody needs when they're a little confused. And of course, with the exchange policy, it makes it really easy.
That's awesome. And you do have a really nice website, because I've been kind of peeking at it on our other screen here. I know that Josh is always really good about taking that web link and posting it into the comments section. So we have people watching from Facebook and YouTube and perhaps LinkedIn and all these places, and they'll just be able to click on that link and just go and check this all out. And I imagine that it's kind of tough to get it for Christmas still, right? But this is still something that would make a great Christmas gift for somebody who is a boater. And like your website shows, it doesn't really matter what kind of boating you're doing. There is an option for you out there.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, this is for any outboard or inboard outboard. Mm-hmm. Our prop does not fit like an inboard V drive or something like that, or for the most part, a sailboat, that has a fixed shaft and propeller under the boat. It's inboard, outboards, and outboards, but it's every single manufacturer and every single horsepower from we didn't drop below 9.9. So it's 9.9 through 300. And predominantly, it really goes through about 260 horsepower, which is the end of your small block, Chevy V8s or whatever, on your stern drives. But we do have some people that have used them as high as 300. They probably aren't the most efficient prop there, but they do work as a spare prop for them. But certainly through 260 horsepower, they work just like a primary propeller.
Mm-hmm. I did have one more question. So you were talking about RPMs and stuff, and being that this propeller is a composite, is there a difference in weight between most of the aluminum props and then the composite prop, and would that affect the RPMs running at
That's
all?
a really good question. I kind of screwed up by not talking about it. The propellers are about half, our propellers are about half the weight of an aluminum prop. And it's even more pronounced because our hub is probably close to on par with an aluminum prop. So the bulk of the weight savings is in the blade. Well, because the bulk of the weight savings is in the blade, the inertia loads, which is I think maybe what you were somewhat alluding to, how long does it take to spin up or slow down or whatever? I think we've all experienced, if you're running a really heavy stainless prop and you're coming into the dock and you put it in, you're in idle going forward, then you go, oh, I'm going to put it in neutral and then back up a little bit. You always hear a clunk with a stainless steel propeller. So a lot of people will hit neutral, wait just a momentarily wait before they put it into reverse to try to allow the stainless prop to kind of wind down a little bit so that you're not smacking on the gear so hard. Our prop, because the inertia it's about an eighth of a stainless steel and about a quarter of an aluminum prop. When you pull the power off, it decelerates very quickly. So you don't have that clunking in and out of gear that you would normally have with an aluminum and really pronounced with a stainless.
You're pointing at me and laughing.
Because you're
I
laughing.
hate that. I
know.
hate that clunk. I hate that clunk. And I'm not going to point any fingers, but because it never happens in our boat. But if I knew somebody who did that, yeah, you did. Do you?
Yeah.
You admit to that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I throw it in and out of gear all the time.
And I'm like, oh my God, I hate that clunk sound. So honestly, I am really glad that you asked that and that's really connected to what you're saying because I don't know why that bothers me so much. Maybe I just know that that's wear and tear on the engine or something. I don't know, but that's really cool that that's something that has a solution that can be solved or changed. Because to be honest, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, that's there against the weight difference. And then on the acceleration side of it, the prop will accelerate faster because they're, again, same thing. It doesn't have as much it doesn't take as much energy to accelerate it due to the mass of the propeller being so much less. But I would have to say that you really don't notice that when running the propeller. It's not as pronounced. It's not like the propeller just winds up so much faster than a stainless prop. You don't notice it there, but you do notice it in the dock going forward to reverse at very low RPM. You'll notice that's a difference in the propeller for sure.
Well, and I think it would be it's probably very noticeable in larger engines with stainless steel, but even when I think you probably notice it quite a bit in, like, we have a 40 with the aluminum on it, and in those lower end boats, 40 and lower, you probably end up with some of that too, because those are just smaller engines and some of the smaller parts, and so you have quite a bit of inertia with the prop size doesn't change very much from like a 40 to a 90,
right.
know, and so like you might not notice it as much in a 90, but in our 40, like, yeah, it gets a little loud sometimes, but sometimes you just need to change gears quick.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because you mentioned like the docks, but I'm thinking, for people who are trying to, like get on the X, like mark a crib, find a specific spot, or even people back to talking about the rivers, when we're talking about walleye season, there are some times where people go out and they are fishing these river systems and they are so packed with boats. And you're like, why do people keep going out there if it's that busy? And it's like, because the fish are biting and because it's fun, right? But sometimes you have to do those micro adjustments. Maybe somebody else is being a Yahoo in the way that they're driving, right? Or you need to scoot over a little bit to be, a few feet shallower or deeper. But I think that those are all really important things because, we're talking about the clunk of that motor, but, I think that also, maybe I'm going crazy here, but that affects the fish, when those fish, they feel vibrations, these things. And so when we go back to talking about things like the river, maybe that doesn't affect them so much. But when we're talking about things like cribs or structure or those kinds of things, that becomes pretty important.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm trying to think of anything else really that you've asked some really good questions that I had failed to bring up on it. Probably one other thing too, I guess, something early on that I learned doing all of those thousands of tests. I had a friend that was out helping me one day. He was driving the boat. I was tending to setting up the obstacles for the propeller and retrieving parts and pieces and looking at what was breaking. And he came in, and at that time, I only had 17 and 19-inch pitch blades for the 260 horsepower stern drive. So for the fun of it, we'd come in, damage the blade. Or actually, I think we probably damaged all three. I replaced it with two 19-inch pitch blades and a 17-inch pitch blade. So I had a blade that was a different pitch. And keep in mind, on a propeller like this, the difference between a 17 and 19-inch pitch is about like 1.5 degrees. Not very much angularity difference between the two blades. So I put it on. He took off. He went maybe 16th of a mile, just coming up on plane. Immediately came around and goes, "We broke something. This thing is vibrating terribly. I don't know what you did, but we broke something." So I go, let me fix it. So I pulled the 17-inch pitch off and put the 19 pitch in. And I said, "Try that." And he goes, "You couldn't have fixed anything." I go, "Just try it." Back to running smooth again. And it brought that to me, that really kind of struck home how a bent aluminum propeller, because like I said, ours act differently. Ours will hit something, they'll hold on, and then all of a sudden they'll just kind of fail. I guess you'd call it more of an explosive failure. It'll just break. But anything that's, say you take off the last inch of the propeller, all the propeller that's left hasn't been bent. The material we're using doesn't really bend. You can't bend it like you can aluminum or a stainless prop. It's either attached in the original form or it's gone. So that meant, and I remember we were testing at Lake Powell for the houseboats up there, and we drove through a really rocky area with the houseboats intentionally to destroy the propeller so he could see what the damage characteristics were. And there again, they like running through parking lots. So for him, testing one of his boats in a shallow area, just running full throttle, not going anywhere in the rocks, was just a normal thing that people did. And then we pulled the props up. Well, actually, I think we did that. Then we continued on up the lake. You knew you weren't going, there was a little performance loss, but you didn't know why there was the performance loss. But like I said, it really wasn't terribly noticeable. A normal renter wouldn't have even known they had done anything. They would have just continued on. We stopped, brought the prop up, and I was missing half a blade on one of the things. And it really struck home that because the blades are so light, the out of balance condition, missing half of a 3-blade, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but it was certainly a third of one of the 3 blades. You really didn't feel it in a houseboat. Now, if you were on a smaller boat, you might have felt it. Houseboats are just big and massive, and you might not have noticed it, but you really didn't feel it. And that's because the pitch of what was left was still correct. Whereas if you would have pulled the blade out, and we were probably running 1411s on that boat, if you would have put out, I don't know, a 13-inch pitch on, you probably would have felt that. But you could lose part of the blade and not even notice it. And of course, it also was frustrating to me that the performance didn't change much, because I spent months and months and months trying to increase the performance of the propeller. And now you go out and you rip off half a blade and you go, there's no performance change. I'm sure glad I'm wasting so much effort trying to make a propeller do better. But anyway, that's another aspect of it. It's an aluminum prop or a stainless prop. If you hit something, probably more prominent in the aluminum prop, you can bend it. And like I said, if you bend one blade 1 degree, that's going to cause a significant amount of vibration. And of course, that vibration you're going to feel, which is uncomfortable. But more importantly, the engine's feeling it too, and it's kind of beating up on the bearings that are in the lower unit. So there again, it's the material that we're using really helps solved that vibration problem.
That's
Couple
awesome.
minutes.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like I've learned so much tonight.
Very good.
Oh my gosh. Well, did you have any other questions?
No, that was my last one.
That was your last one. That was a really good one. That was why I asked that.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about rocks and stuff. We just started doing a prop for another company, and they build jet drives, obviously for rocky areas and stuff. And they're just now converting over the aluminum props to the composite ones for all the same reasons we're talking about right now. They can replace the blades absorb energy better and stuff like that. So it's worked. That whole project that we're just finishing out has worked out very well for them. On their jet drives. So it's not just, that's not our product, that's somebody else's product, but they're using kind of the same technology that we developed here for the jet drives as well.
That's cool.
That is cool. Yeah. Well, and for people at home that are looking for Piranha products, we do have that website posted and all kinds of information there. It does look like there is also a dealer finder. So if you want to go and see these in person or talk to somebody, maybe that's an option depending on where you live. But you can check that out. And other than that, I have to say thank you so much for being here to talk about all this tonight.
You're very welcome. You're very welcum.
Yeah. Yeah, it has been really fun. Actually, it almost makes me excited for open water. But to the people at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because that is always a big part of the fun. And I have to say also Merry Christmas, right? Because 1 week from now, I believe, is Christmas Eve. So we normally do Thursdays. And so I don't think we're going to be here next week.
Or the week after. This is our last show of 2025.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know that we're going to be trying to get out on ice and doing all kinds of fishing. So if we can come to you live, or I don't know, maybe all kinds of posts along the way. But we hope that everyone has a wonderful holiday season and can't wait to see you on our next edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.